friends. This is Fix It with Fran, where I talk about all things faith, family, food, and fun. And I wanted to come and show y'all this Wednesday because I was thinking about videos and what I've been sharing with y'all, and I realized that I haven't shown y'all my African violets in a really long time. So right here is one of the African violets in our living room. This is one of my Optimara violets that I ordered from the website, and I think, yes, this one is Rocky Mountain. So it is in bloom, and I'm going to get in close here so that y'all can see this beautiful bloom. And something else that had crossed my mind is the fact that I had been doing these updates and kind of watering them, and that they hadn't been included. So the updates had been previously kind of focusing on the Arrow Gardens, but this update today will be a What's Growing Wednesday, but just about my African violets. So as you can see here, this one is in bloom, and it's a really beautiful bloom, which is part of what attracted me to it. So this is a special series. I don't know if it was like the American Mountain Ranges or American Landmarks that they had done on Optimara. I'll try to find that and stitch that back in. So I showed y'all these in a previous video a while ago, sometime last year, I think in 2021, if not 2020. When I got these, I had ordered them directly from Optimara's Selective Gardener website, the retailer where they sell them directly. It was shipped to my home. It was shipped in great condition, but if I kind of branch out here and zoom out a little bit, you'll see this has gone out in full, like that dinner plate type of spread. So if you, for comparison size, look, this is my hand, and that is the full size of this African violet. So right here I put it in our living room area. Let me see if I can. We have some very high windows in here, a lot of bright sun that comes in and into the room. So I wanted to put this down here right in our main living area to see if there was enough light or just brightness to make this plant happy. I do see that the leaves are kind of stretching a bit, but not so much so that it's obnoxious to me. But one thing, you always kind of follow the lead of your leaves. If your leaves start tilting a certain way, sometimes I can tell you that your plant's not getting enough light or it needs to be repositioned into more direct light. But for so far of this being here, it's been here a few months now. I like how this looks. I may have to adjust it to put it somewhere that's closer to the window and some of the light coming in, but for the most part, this does get a lot of light throughout the day. So next to it is another small little African violet. I think this one came from Walmart or Home Depot. It's not blooming yet, but hopefully that'll happen soon. Here I have, I believe, what is the Princess Hoya, because the princess has the white in the center, like the princess wearing her gown, where the queen has the white on the outside, like the queen wearing her crown. That's how I remember the difference. Here, there's another African violet, and I think this is starting to like mutate a little bit. I think it's starting to do where there's different heads that are coming up. So when you start to see a cluster like this in the middle of existing leaves, and eventually what I'm going to have to do is split this into different plants, because what's going to end up happening is that all of these little branch outs are going to start to be their own crown, and this will crowd itself out. So I will have to separate that one. And this is the last little African violet that's over here. It's not blooming either, but it is putting out some new leaves, so that's still good. And another thing that I realized too is that this one started to bloom again for me whenever I put some of my Optimara nutrient, not Optimara, some of the African violet nutrient that I have. I do have some that came directly from Optimara. I have not used that yet. I'll show y'all the one I've been using. So this is the African violet food that I use for my African violets. It comes in a little dropper bottle. I thought it had a picture on the outside. This one doesn't, but you use 7 drops for every quart of water. I usually use my gallon size jugs to water my plants, so that would be 4 quarts in 1 gallon. So I would use 7 times 4 is 28 drops if I was doing it at full strength. But if you know anything about African violets, you know that they often say in different gardening groups that you want to feed them a week feeding weekly. That's W-E-A-K feeding every week. And why do you do that? Because when you give them just a week feeding, it really helps to give the plant some nutrients, but not too much. Sometimes what I have happen or what we saw happen with that one plant where there was a cluster of leaves, that could have been too much fertilization for that plant, and so it will spurt a lot of growth, or you'll get a change in the color of your leaves. But if you give it a week feeding, you're kind of safer with the plant getting more evenly balanced nutrients and not too much so that it doesn't spur growth in the wrong direction. So I mentioned that because that plant that I just showed y'all with the cluster of leaves, it may very well be that it got too much nutrients, or sometimes they just do random mutations like that and you don't really know why. But as I think through different things and troubleshoot with my plants, I always remember that if I've done a recent feeding and they do some things that I don't like, or I see some yellowing of the leaves, then I want to tear that back a little bit. So sometimes I'll even do 7 drops for a full gallon. But you learn how your flowers and your plants perform. You really get feedback from them. But in general, if you're having any issues with your African violets not blooming and you haven't fertilized, you may want to start doing a very weak dilution of this solution so that you can get your plants growing. If at any point your plant gets stagnant, you want to rethink what you're doing, and sometimes adding the fertilizer is the key thing to jumpstart some new growth. I'll show you another one that I got from Optimara on the Selective Gardener website that is about to put out some flowers but has not yet. One second. Before I get to that one, this is another African violet that came from Home Depot. Just recently, this violet took a tumble along with its sister here that looks like it's not bouncing back. But I'll show you this one first. A good thing sometimes about letting it drop, and I've said this in groups and I learned it from a more seasoned African violet grower, is that if you have a plant that has not bloomed or has not put out any flowers, they say to drop it. I'm trying to look to see if it's putting out any buds yet. And by drop it, they mean like pick it up, drop it like that. Sometimes you can drop it further to the ground, but I really just do a drop like that. And what that will do is kind of shock the roots and shock the plant a little bit. I've done this before for a violet for me that was not growing, and I kid you not, the following week it put out blooms. Now I have to research this again, but if my memory serves me, I think part of that shock is that it literally just jostles the plant a little bit. Sometimes it gives the plant what they say, that survival of the fittest kind of response, where it's kind of fight or flight, and they decide that, oh, something's happening and I need to put out new growth so that I can exist. Like something happened that might have just killed me or killed my roots, and then the plant responds by putting out more flowers, putting out more leaves. So I'll put a link below to where I read that. I think I even read it on, the Optimara site. That's one of the tips that the seasoned growers give about getting your violet to rebloom. So let me show you this other one that's a sad story. So this past weekend I was in the kitchen and I was sweeping up some different things and trying to get the floor ready to mop, which is a never-ending task with a toddler. Although Monica is at that stage now where she's not just throwing food on the floor anymore. Thank the Lord Jesus. So not as bad as it used to be in that little in between 1 and 2 year old stage when her declaration of being done with her food was to throw her plate on the floor. That was a hard little struggle we went through there. But back to this. So I was sweeping the floor, I was doing some things. These were sitting on top of my AeroGarden farm, and something happened. Monica got shocked, something jostled. This ended up on the floor, face down, completely crushing this crown right here. So I recouped. I had a moment, shed a little tear for the one that was lost. Not really, because it's a plant. I ain't cried. But I told myself, let me try to gather, and some of these are still drooping just from where they were so sad. I left this in the soil to see if sometimes what can happen again is that the plant responds and sends out a bunch of little leaf growths once this callus is over. Even if it doesn't do that, all these right here are leaves that were still really healthy that got snapped, and I just took them into the dirt, or into the soil rather. And I've shown y'all before, I'll put a link to that video where that's another way to propagate your African violets. And here I just stuck them all in because they were all over the floor, and I said, look, we're gonna stick them in and maybe 2 or 3 will come back, and then I have the multiplication of from one plant I get 2, maybe 3 more. But I just kept it simple, stuck them down in the dirt, and if any of these take, what you'll start to see is some leaves pop up right here on the front and new growths. You definitely put in the link to the other video so y'all can see that. So yeah, that happened with this one. It's one of the casualties of having plants and toddlers and plants in your house in general. But if you ever have one that falls, don't fear. Grab your leaves, stick them back in the dirt, try to recover it. You can also stick them in water. That's another way to propagate, but all is not lost. Just hold on. And I'm still kind of, I'm holding out hope. I think this part may come back for me, but we'll see. I'm still working my way over to that other Optimara flower, but I wanted to show y'all this one. This sits in a self-watering or self-wicking pot on the kitchen table, and it put out some blooms for me last month. Again, if you want to see, this is my hand, and this is this plant. So this plant is pretty massive, and it just sits here, and it's been growing. This may be the last of my little flowers that this one wants to put out. Sorry, I was trying to brighten that for you so y'all could see it. But a really pretty purple bloom, and this is another one that was putting out a lot of green, and then when I added the nutrient, that little fertilizer solution to the water, it decided to bloom for me. Now we're gonna go see this Optimara one. All right, we finally made our way over to this beauty, and this one lives in a little pot that's over by one of my Aero Gardens. This is my Bounty Elite, or yeah, I think it's Elite, the stainless steel Bounty. I haven't done an update on this one, but I started some different tomatoes and herbs, and eventually I'm going to move these tomatoes out because I wanted the herbs to start, so I'm going to move the thyme. Is it dill? This is just dill. My other Aero Garden is a Harvest 360 that has dill. No, this has dill. So the Harvest 360 has 2 thymes, another basil, and some chives that have not started. So I think I'm going to take the chives out and replace them with the dill. If you've ever grown dill in the Aero Garden, you know it grows very aggressively and is often one of the first ones to start. But I'm planning on doing more canning and pickling this year, so I do want to have some dill in supply. Back to this Optimara. So I was in love with this because of the variegated leaves, and initially they were coming out very white. So I will say that that fertilizer, oftentimes when I add it, I noticed that my variegated plants will put out a change in their leaf color. So it was kind of interesting to see how these went back to the more purplish color in the leaves, and that is no, or pinkish even, but that is no filtration of the light. That is true to how they look even to my naked eye right now. And you see here there's some purple flowers that are coming out. So this one I believe is another one, like I said, from Optimara, and this is again variegated with the white edging on the leaves, in some cases pink, and this is Modesty. So I think Modesty does put out a very deep violet purple flower. I'll also try to go back and grab some of these images from the Optimara site so you can see them and how they originally looked. So this one does look like it's starting to spread in some different ways. When you get clusters of leaves like this, where there's a cluster here and a cluster here, it makes me think that I may have multiple crowns going on in this plant, but I'm going to have to, again, let this go. So what I do, for me personally, in my growing experience, I have about 20 African violets right now, just a wide estimate, but I have some downstairs, some upstairs, one in Monica's room. I'm gonna go check that one out so y'all can see that it's blooming, some in my guest room and some in my offices. So yeah, there's a lot of African violets spread out. They're not just all at the house. But what I have noticed is that when you start seeing these different clusters of leaves, that usually you have the crown. But again, what I like to do is to just let them bloom. When they're happy and at least blooming, I don't try to disturb them, because it's also been my experience that if these plants have a lot of jostling or just interruption to their stability, and you're splitting them up while they're blooming, it can blast your blooms and then they fade and you never get to see them fully open. So what I like to do is to just let them do their own thuck thizzle, let them grow up, let them do everything as far as blooming, because many times even you can end up with a new offshoot or a new plant that grows even from these flower stalks. I have had that happen before. So I want to let them do everything that they have in their heart and purpose to do, grow up, bloom, get to admire them, and then I'll start doing some surgery on them when they've gone back into a more stagnant or hibernation type mode. So let's walk upstairs and I will show you the one in Monica's room. All right, I got distracted. So I saw these over here, and these sit on top of our wine cooler. This is one that is in that pot from, what's the place? Selective Gardener. And let me stand against the light. It's blooming for me, this really kind of deep burgundy flower. This one back here is another one that has put up multiple crowns. So again, you see how there's like a group of leaves here and a group of leaves here. That lets me know, yeah, I gotta split these. And I let this one sit, see if I can get a good angle where you can see it. Yeah, from this back side, you can see this is one plant. And oh, this is even better. So you can see now that after I just let it kind of go on its own and get, sometimes it can look like different clusters of leaves, but you can't really clearly differentiate which plant is which. But here at the bottom, you can really see that this is one plant coming from this area, And then this is another plant coming from this area. I believe too that this was another flower that came from Selective Gardening. So I'm going to have to split that. And since this one is not blooming, splitting it in the upcoming weeks will probably be a good thing, a good idea. Over here is a mini that came from one of the growers in my area that I've done some trading with. I'm not even sure the name of this one, but I know this is a mini. It's never really been really happy for me, period. She was doing some purging of her collection, and I put it into one of these little glasses from like the Dollar Tree. So yeah, I'm just happy to see it bloom again, but I think at some point this will be retired from the collection, or I'm just going to cut back all of these leaves and try to propagate them to get a more compact plant, because the way that it's spreading is not really, I don't know, I think for this one, as far as what I understand, it should be more compact and more centered, but how this is sprawling out and going all these different directions, it just doesn't look as nice to me, so I'm going to try to work on this. Now we're going to go upstairs. All right, and this is the African violet in Monica's room. Monica's room just seems to be this magical place because I swear the flowers in here just thrive. She has a orchid that has been blooming since January of 2022. Initially, it had 20 different buds on it. It's now growing out some new buds, so there's a new bud here. And I think, yep, there's another new bud on this one, if I can pull it back. So right here by my middle finger, and on this front one, there's another new bud. So yeah, Monica's room is magic for these plants. She has this orchid here that's putting out another leaf. This orchid here looks like it's about to give up the ghost. But even still, it has these buds that are coming out. So this may be its final bloom or flourish. It may even put out a little Kiki for us, a new orchid that offshoots off of a dying orchid. And she has this one here that's putting out some new buds. This is one of the orchids that came from Whole Foods. I think that's my Charming Sunshine orchid that's going to put out yellow blooms. And then right here is another orchid I think that came from Whole Foods that's going to put out some purple blooms. So in addition to this African violet that literally, again, the size of my hand, it's dinner plated out beautifully. It's a lovely display, a lovely spread. And these flowers are white with some purple flourish. So again, I think that was, and this I think is more of a scalloped flower, if I remember my descriptive terminology from the Optimara guide. But these clusters have been coming up and booming. Then this other cluster here, and I think it's putting up, yeah, if you look underneath, some more buds. So this one is very, very, very happy. Beautiful deep color to the leaves. It's just doing its thing. So in addition to having this African violet growing, she has 4 active orchid spikes, and I'm looking to see another one's going to be coming up. No, I don't think so. So it's, yeah, 4, and then 2 more that are putting out new leaves. So that's everything in Monica's little window collection. It's really nice in here. Oh, and then the Manjula pothos that are still growing in this traditional golden. So that's really everything that's growing this Wednesday. Hope y'all are having a good one. As always, this is Fix It with Fran, where I talk about all things faith, family, food, and fun. I truly believe God has given us all gifts and talents that can fix some problem that exists in the world. And while you may not be able to fix everything, I want to remind and encourage you to remember that we can all fix something. Maybe you can fix it with something nice that you grow around your house. Until next time, I pray that you would find that thing and fix it. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments, what do you have growing this Wednesday? Hope it's something beautiful. See y'all next time.